This is the mayor down in Indian Trail who actually joins us now on News Talk 1110 WBT, Mayor John Quinn. Welcome.
Thank you, Pete.
I appreciate you making some time for us. So this is a kind of involved story, and you've been in office now for how long? About a year and a half, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you ran originally on a platform of reform, correct?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
And give us the idea, the nature of the things, just kind of a broad brush idea of what it was that you saw from the outside that you wanted to get inside to then fix. What were some of the general issues?
Well, you probably have a better feel for my background, Pete. Well, I'm sure you do because you've known me for a little while.
I've known you for years, yeah, and actually, well, we can do that too. I mean, we can go into the full disclosure here, which is simply that John Quinn used to work for an insurance company along with another guy, Jerry Dry,
right?
Who Jerry blew the whistle on a company here in town that you guys then came to me. We did a bunch of research and some stories into it. Department of Public Instruction. Or not public, the State Department of Insurance. Yep. We were up there with the former Commissioner Jim Long, talking to him about these various things. So that's where I first met you. You were a friend of Jerry's. Jerry was the whistleblower in that case. So then you moved down to Indian Trail and you decided to run for mayor at some point. So why did you decide to do that?
Well, that incident with the Department of Insurance and the whistleblower case, where I had an opportunity to help this gentleman who had come to me asking for my advice and help, really gave me a sense of it was great to be able to help somebody. And I had been doing some of that, Pete, for a while with senior citizens. My area of expertise is in senior citizen-related insurance matters, Medicare, Social Security, and that kind of thing.
And that was one of the things that Jerry Dry was most upset about also in the case that he blew the whistle on, was that some of the practices that the company he was involved with he did not believe were ethical and above board.
Absolutely, and frankly, you probably forgot this, but I had worked for that company as well, and I had been upset about unethical practices at the time, and I was fired from that company in 1997. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I went into business for myself and have been very happy ever since.
And this was also, for full disclosure, this was after 2001. This was, about 2002. And in 2001, by pure coincidence, and this is honestly by pure coincidence, a friend of mine worked for that very company and had recruited me to leave WBT. At the time, I was a lowly, grunt reporter, and he had recruited me. I went and got my insurance license and was all set to go work for them, gave my notice at the station, was prepared to leave. And then 9/11 hit, and I decided not to get into the insurance field at that time, and insurance license lapsed and everything. But that was the exact same company, and kind of made it a bit tricky when I started investigating them about a year later, but so be it. That was the tangled web there.
Yeah, and it's amazing how things like that work out, and you had an inside view of the company and a different perspective than any other reporter might have had. So how we ended up talking and all that was just, I don't know if it was coincidence or not. I was shopping around for someone to take interest in this thing because it was, without getting into it, it was a pretty compelling story of corruption, and Jerry had a audio tape of cheating on a state exam, and the State Department of Insurance did nothing about it, and at any rate, he got fired. But all turned out well because of the media coverage. He ultimately got an attorney and settled with the company out of court, which never would have happened without you.
And you. But anyway, so that's the background of how John and I, Mayor Quinn here now, how we kind of crossed paths originally almost 8 years ago. And then I see in the last election that guy, John Quinn, he's running for mayor down in Indian Trail. He got elected, and you were arguing against a lot, and I talked to you right up around the election a couple times, and you were at the time talking about these the developers down there and the town council and the mayor and these relationships that were too cozy.
And that's right. I moved to Indian Trail 5 years ago and have been a resident of Indian Trail just 5 years now. And interestingly, half the population of Indian Trail has lived there 5 years or less, 48.5% according to a recent study. And I had no intention really to get involved in politics. I've always been, never really liked it, and I think a lot of people don't. And my dealings with the Department of Insurance and that kind of thing didn't help. But I had come to a neighborhood that had some zoning problems. The developer had been allowed to do things that the town did not regulate, that should have regulated. And a couple of the council people had run a couple of years before that, or a year and a half before that, and they were complaining about that. And I had neighbors telling me how they had been duped, and their property values went down. And I was, I felt bad about it, and I had been looking for ways to be of service and to be of help. And Jerry Dry situation was one, and my senior citizen customers, people come to me and ask me. So I went to town hall and I talked to some people, and I made a couple of little public comment speeches about what had happened in our neighborhood and that they ought to make the developer come back and do the proper screening and shield the neighborhood against some of the development that had been going up around it that was supposed to be done. And it was fairly successful. They came around and planning department, and with the support of these two council people who had been kind of campaigning on some of these issues, it worked pretty well.
And who were those? Who were those two council members?
These the members were Dan Schallenkamp and Shirley Howe.
Right.
And they became friends, I thought, and they started asking me about running for the position of mayor, or anything, just running and getting involved. So I was appointed to the planning board. I was appointed to the transportation committee, and I was elected the president of my homeowners association. And so I all of a sudden got involved in civic and community activities that I'd never been involved in before. In the meantime, there was some things going on here. When Schallenkamp and Howe came into office, the first thing they did was fire the town manager, and that caused a huge row. The town
and that was Ed. That was Ed Humphreys.
No, that was a man named John Munn.
Oh, that's okay.
And there were some issues that came up after that. They brought in an interim town manager who was a former state senator and state representative who ran for governor from Union County, Fern Schubert,
mm-hmm.
a very ethical woman of integrity and an accountant.
Right.
And she did a very good job in the time she was there while they were looking for a permanent town manager. I wondered why they didn't keep her on. But she discovered some things that had been going on in previous years with regard to funneling money to retirement accounts that no one ever knew about, with no taxes being paid. The mayor had been taking expense money, $200 a month, under the table, shall we say, because it had never been authorized by the council. There was no expense reimbursement policy or any kind of policy for stipend money to be paid to any council member.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an issue. Later it was found out that she had engaged the town computer provider to intercept all emails from council and other, apparently some staffers, to go directly to her in a separate account. And that was discovered, and, unethical things going on. And that's about when they started asking me if I would do something, and they were in battles with her all the time. And I thought, this is wrong, this is unethical.
This was the former mayor.
It was.
Joining me is the mayor of Indian Trail down in Union County, John Quinn. And Mayor Quinn, we kind of talked about how you got into office and what what the reasoning behind that. And these two council members who were allies of yours, at least in the campaign, to unseat the incumbent, who had engaged in some pretty shady activities, shall we say. So then what happens is you get pulled aside, I guess, by the town manager, not Fern Schubert, but I guess her replacement, this Ed Humphreys.
Correct.
Who tells you that there's been some complaint against you from some staffers.
Correct. He came to me. I want to preface that briefly by saying that with the staff, I understand the former mayor was very popular with the staff, and I get the distinct impression that I was not welcome. It was not a welcome election for the. She had been there 8 years as a councilperson and the mayor, and the people, the voters, did not think that she was all that, I guess, but the staff did like her, and so I was coming into a situation there where, in fact, I was told by one staffer that they thought the other mayor was great, kind of implying that I wasn't all that
right,
great,
that you were not great.
Yeah, whatever, and I didn't need to hear that.
Well, but you know what? But John, you know that's part of the beast. I mean, that is
Sure.
you have that friction going on between staff and elected representatives all the time, especially in this state, given that it's a council-manager form of government. Mayor has no vote. Mayor is a weak mayor system.
Correct, and that's fine. But you're right. The manager came to me in June, the first week or so of June, just about a year ago, and told me that there had been at least a couple of staffers that were uncomfortable with me coming to town hall and discussing things with him, as I was wont to do a couple, 3 times a week. I'd stop in, and he was kind of mentoring me in many ways, and it was helpful.
Well, you had never held an elective office before.
Right, and I appreciated his help. I kind of looked at him as Uncle Ed kind of thing.
But these staffers, these were people who, I mean, he was town manager, so they worked for him, and the indication was that they didn't like you coming to meet with him.
Well, I think they just didn't want me around, and there was the situation where he had been allowing me to submit mileage and mileage, really, reimbursement for things that I attended on behalf of the town in school and training that I had gone to, and there was no official policy for that in the town of Indian Trail. I had been tipped off by actually Mr. Schallenkamp that I ought to look and see what the former mayor had been receiving, because I wanted to develop a policy of reimbursement. I thought, there was a problem before with the mayor getting money for whatever it was, and then after that was discovered, reimbursements for mileage were given to her, and there was never any policy for it. And I thought, I don't want to be in a position where they say, hey, you're taking money under the table.
Right.
So I brought it to the council and said, can we develop a policy of reimbursement? And I was really kind of stonewalled, and it surprised me that they weren't interested in doing that. So I pursued, I was told to look into the documents from the former mayor, and I found that she had been collecting for mileage toward the end of her term, and I had been as well. And I put that out there, and I said, if I'm going to be collecting, let's have a policy that basically says that, whatever the going rate is, you can collect. And it took me 3 meetings to get that in effect, and I ended up doing research on what had happened with hers and so forth, and I think that ruffled some feathers because it was opening up old wounds, and I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to create a basis for a reimbursement policy.
But for people who knew that she had these allegations swirling around her, it looks like you're digging through the trash trying to find incriminating evidence against her.
Yeah, and I was
Were
not.
you?
I was in almost like in retrospect, I think, and this is speculation, Pete, but it almost seems like I was being used to do something to that effect through the Stonewall. I just could not understand the rationale of not having a policy of reimbursement when it had been going on for so long.
Well, yeah, it's just absurd. If you're, I mean, at the very least, the town has to have some form of reimbursement policy for all of its employees, does it
Well, the
not?
employees have one.
Right. Well, then just copy that one.
Well, yeah. So,
yeah, go by that or whatever. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so they stonewall you on this for whatever reason.
I couldn't figure it out, but it took me three agenda items to bringing it back 3 times and arguing that it was an important thing, and I thought I deserved it. I mean, it's not like we get paid a whole lot of money, and I was running around here trying to do everything I could to promote the town and be everywhere everybody wanted me to be, and finally it was approved. But I think it ruffled some feathers, and around that time the manager came to me and said that these folks don't want me around town hall, and then he went on to say that in a meeting one of them had put out there that the reason I had advocated that when they renovate town hall they include a small office for the mayor and council to use for whatever reason, meeting with people or research or putting your files in and all that, and she had said that she believed that I wanted an office because I wanted to run my insurance business out of it. And I was incensed. I thought it was inappropriate. I don't know why he was even telling me. I told him, you ought to just deal with this, and I don't want to hear about this. But that started a process, a problem. And what ultimately happened there, a meeting was called where I thought I was going to clear the air with the manager and this employee, and Mr. Schallenkamp happened to be there. And it turned out that he conducted the meeting. The tenor of it was, Mayor, basically, don't say anything about this to the rest of the council. It's this was done behind the rest of the council's back. I understood, and they didn't want it to come out, and it would be bad for the town. And you're kind of paranoid anyway, and so just leave the whole thing alone and let's forget it. And
Can I ask? And I'm not going to ask you who this employee was, but is this employee that made this allegation? Is this like some kind of high-ranking employee, or is this like some clerical staff?
No, it was a high-ranking.
High-ranking. Okay, so it has the ability to impact town business and such in relationships with others. Okay, Mayor John Quinn from Indian Trail down in Union County joins us. He is in the middle of a smackdown with his town council. The town board comprises, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it 6 people?
5 council members and the mayor.
Okay, 5 council. So let me see. I've got Shirley Howe, who's mayor pro tem.
Right.
John Hullinger.
Right.
Dan Schallenkamp. Gary D'Onofrio. And then which one is Keith Merritt? Is he a council? He's
the town attorney.
He's the town attorney. So then that's Jeffrey Goodall is the other one.
Right.
Okay. And so the initial meeting then that you have with then town manager Ed Humphreys, along with this town employee who accused you of using or wanting an office at Town Hall in order to run your insurance company out of, which is, I'm assuming, not true.
Right.
All right. And so you have this meeting, you show up, and Dan Schallenkamp is there, and he essentially runs the meeting, you say. Schallenkamp being one of the town council members who convinced you to run for mayor or to get involved a year and a half ago.
Right. He actually coined the phrase "public service with integrity" to put on my website in my campaign as a campaign slogan.
So he helped with your campaign to some extent.
He did.
Okay. So
on my website and so forth.
All right. So you show up at this meeting. Then you think it's going to be you, Ed Humphreys, and the employee. Find out what this woman's problem is, or whatever. Or I guess it's a woman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So find out what this woman's problem is and get to the bottom of it. And you see Councilman Schallenkamp is there, and he's running the meeting. And then you're saying that he did this to what was the purpose of him running this meeting? Why was he there?
Well, as I understand it now, I think it was just to protect the employee who turns out is a friend of Shirley Howe's, and this stuff, Pete. It gets. It's
a small town.
Yeah, and it's small. It's just small. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that too. But it's a small town. People know each other. People talk. People know everybody else's business. All that other stuff. So he's there. He's there to protect this employee. In case you threatened to have her fired or something?
No, I had no power to have anybody fired. That's the town manager's. In fact, the town manager should be managing and dealing with all employee matters. The council has no business interfering with that. The manager, Mr. Humphreys, had complained to me for months that there was interference from Shirley Howe. He was always complaining that she was always interfering with his job, and I didn't know that it was. I thought the council had a right to, get involved and do whatever they wanted, and I finally asked them to stop talking to me about it. I just don't want to hear it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But in retrospect and looking back, this was an example of where the council manager, form of government, the manager runs the day-to-day operations and has all authority to deal with staff matters. The council should have nothing to do with any of that stuff, and I was new and I didn't know, but I knew it was wrong, and I knew it felt like lousy. They even trotted another employee in, the one who apparently wasn't comfortable with me being around town hall, before the meeting was over, and asked her if she had anything to say to me, and she had a problem. And she declared no and immediately left. She was fine. But it was just, the whole thing was bizarre, and I had it out with Schallenkamp, and the relationship was never the same after that. But it hurt. But that's the way it is. And
that's politics.
Yeah, and that's fine. So I got a lesson, and we carried on. But what I think the lesson in all this is that the town manager was recently fired, and but I understand now, and have had subsequent conversations with him, that he had his legs taken out from under him. He really didn't have the ability to do his job. He wasn't given that ability, and there were so many conflicting interests, and I think that, Pete, is why we have things like this. And I just chose to stop putting up with the innuendo and the backroom comments to me, because I'm a guy that brings issues to the table. If I see something that's wrong, or if a citizen comes to me with a problem, and I've had people come to me with problems, and they couldn't get any help. They were getting stonewalled or whatever, and it's not that frequent, but it happens. And I would come and bring these issues, and it ruffled feathers apparently. And
all right, so then that brings us to Tuesday night. There is a resolution that is passed along a 4-1 vote by the town council. Whereas the town of Indian Trail operates under council-manager form of government, blah, 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 it talks about these different things. It says that you have no authority to give direction to employees, contractors, or anybody else, and that the current mayor has engaged in various interactions with town employees wherein the staff believes that the mayor has given them direction with respect to a matter. So in other words, they're mad that you've told them to do something, and that you've engaged in tape recording various conversations with town employees, that because of those two main points, that you've directed staff to do stuff when you're not constitutionally or legally delegated to have that authority, and also that you've tape recorded town employees, that because of that, they want you to not communicate with town staff only through the town manager, and that the manager may, at his or her discretion, direct that such communication only be in writing, and that you're not allowed to walk around town hall except in the public areas of town hall. You're not allowed to go into non-public areas unless you have a hall pass or you're accompanied by somebody. I don't know, maybe the town manager would walk with you or something.
No thanks.
Well, let me ask you this: the tape recordings. What's up with that? What's the deal? Why are you tape recording conversations with town employees?
Well, the only tape recording that I have done, and things would come up in closed session. Things like this. The mayor is, harassing employees, and I'd say, stop right there. If you're going to go on with this, I'm going to record what you're saying, because it's outside the venue of a closed session.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, it's not permitted under the general statutes of what's allowed to be discussed in closed session by an elected body.
Right, and so when these things would come up and they'd get contentious, I have a pocket tape recorder, a professional recorder, and I decided to carry it with me in case some of these things were brought up, because here I'm being accused of things behind the scenes and treated differently than the other elected officials, and I thought, I need to be able to document some of this stuff if to protect myself, basically. And,
certainly, John, you know that you can't start tape recording closed sessions without anybody knowing it.
Right, and I didn't do that.
Okay.
Although the statute does not address that. The statute, the North Carolina law does not prohibit elected officials from recording closed sessions. It's not in there. There is no reference to it. So, I don't believe that is inherently wrong. If somebody wants to make sure that they have clarity on a particular issue, in fact, the town routinely records closed session, and I asked for a recording so I could listen to some things that had gone on, so I could get some clarity, and they refused to allow me to do that. But the statute doesn't address that at all. So even if I had, or anybody else had, I don't think that there's no criminal action involved.
So what about this idea that you've tape recorded various conversations with town employees?
Well, I started routinely tape recording some, not all, but some of conversations that I would have when I'd call in and discuss things with the interim town manager.
The interim town manager, the one who replaced Ed Humphreys, who you said had his legs cut out from underneath them.
Yeah.
This is one Peggy, how do you pronounce the name? Piontek?
Yeah.
Piontek. Peggy Piontek is the interim town manager. And so you recorded your conversations with her.
I recorded a couple. I haven't.
Did she know that these were being recorded?
No, but that's not illegal either.
No. Well, yeah, I'm fairly well versed on that law. But the idea is that you're recording these conversations without her knowledge. To what end? What's the reason for that?
Because her first day in as the interim town manager, which Mr. Hollinger and I objected to, but that's a different story.
You and Councilman Hollinger opposed this woman to be named the interim town manager.
Yes.
You made comments in the local press out there too, didn't you?
Right.
Right, and they didn't like that.
They don't.
No, the town council. Like in fact, actually, you know what? Here, there's a clip here. This is D'Onofrio, Gary D'Onofrio. I'm going to play this clip. This is what he said at the meeting, which I found to be a bit odd to hear somebody get up and say this as this is his argument of why essentially you shouldn't be allowed to go into town hall and to ask things of staff. It's kind of an interesting kind of aside that he offers up.
It's an embarrassment that we've had to come to this, but it was also an embarrassment to see immediate non-supportive comments in all the local press right after we chose an interim town manager, the majority of the council. In most towns, and I believe it's also in Indian Trail's duties of a mayor, that particular position, that they support the majority of the council. They may not agree with the majority of the council, but the mayors usually, in their job description, are asked to support the rulings of the council and not be contrary to all of them, which is what's happened, seems to be, in the last few months with all the press that people read. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people know Indian Trail for. There's things, I think there's something on topics now and some of these websites and blog sites, and it has become an embarrassment.
Well, so he's essentially arguing that they don't like that you've opposed them.
Right.
That they hired this interim town manager and you didn't like it, and so you told the press when they asked you, "Hey, what do you think of the interim town manager being named?" And you were like, "I don't like it." And to them, this is an egregious breach of protocol somehow, that the mayor should be on board with whatever the council votes for. Or at least not all of it, or you should not be contrarian. I've never heard that argument made before.
Well, Pete, I think you nailed it. That is the absolute crux of this whole matter. If the mindset is, if you don't toe the company line and preach what they want you to preach based on whatever majority is talking about, and that, what he said, I started, wanting to go to sleep. I'm sorry. Oh, and by the way, that was not D'Onofrio, that was Goodall.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Goodall. Okay.
Credit where credit is due.
Yes, okay. So that was Jeffrey Goodall.
Yeah, and I have a hard time listening to some of these rationalizations, if you want to call them that.
Is he related to the Senator Eddie Goodall?
He is, and he is related to the Senator Eddie Goodall, who I understand does a pretty good job for Union County. I've met him a couple of times, and he seems like a nice guy.
And so, is Jeffrey his son?
No, he's his brother. His brother,
okay. So so that's Jeffrey Goodall who's making this argument,
right?
That the mayor should support the council, and that they didn't like it, and they're talking about how this is an embarrassment, this resolution, because John Hollinger, was the first one to speak, and he said, this is an embarrassment to do something like this. This is absurd, and he opposed it. He was the only one to oppose it, and so that's why Goodall was saying, well, it is an embarrassment, but it's an embarrassment because the mayor won't go along with what we want him to go along with. Now, John, in all honesty, I know you. I've known you for a while. You do oppose people on things, yeah. And sometimes you do so quite vociferously, and you dig in your heels. You can be stubborn.
Yep.
And maybe let me ask you this way: do you think you should shoulder any of the blame in any of this poor relationship you have with the council?
Well, there's no question. It works both ways. You're right. Pete, I tell you what, you had something on a couple of months ago, a gentleman from, California, that was talking about political strategies, and how to defeat your opponents
Yeah.
with arguments. And he said something. I was driving home and I was listening to you, and he said something that just stuck with me. He said, when you're doing battle in a political realm and you win the argument, you have to leave your opponents a way out. And that hit me. It said, John, you haven't learned the art of when you win a battle, leave your opponents a
way to save face.
Right. And I think my style sometimes lends itself to not doing that. So, in kind of soul searching about all this, that's kind of what I've come up with. But the real issue, Pete, is that if you don't toe the line, you get personally attacked. Our Hollinger's and mine objection was that there was a lack of experience and some other issues, but a lack of experience primarily. There was no town managerial experience of any kind, or any kind of managerial experience really, and we just thought the choice was wrong, and we have an obligation to say so, and I think that's what you're elected to do, to tell the truth and give people the full story, not just the cover-up or the whitewashed story.
My guest is the Indian Trail Mayor John Quinn. He's kind of going through some of the history and what led up to this resolution on Tuesday night, where the town council voted 4-1 to restrict the mayor from communicating with town staff only through the town manager, and the town manager may, at his or her discretion, direct that such communication only be in writing, and that the mayor is not allowed to enter any non-public areas of town offices without the specific authorization of the town manager. Now, I have to ask this because I've seen you in action when you get a hold of a story. Is it possible that you went after town staffers a bit too strongly? Did you harass them? Did you press them too much on anything that could be considered unprofessional?
I don't think so, Pete. In fact, no one has come to me and told me any incident or instance where I had said this or that or any specific incident. This resolution is and I appreciate your the context you painted when you asked the question, but no, I really don't, and I may be wrong, but no one has ever talked to me about it. And I asked the former town manager, look, can I come to a staff meeting and tell him what I'm really about? And he discouraged that for whatever reason. But but I really don't think so. I've said all along, if there is anything I have done or am doing that is illegal, unethical, or immoral, let me know what it is so I can change it, or bring it up in open session so everybody knows about it. And that's never been done. So there isn't anything specifically that I can point to. I have been critical of. Well, let me give you an example, all right? And I'll try to do it briefly.
Yeah, we got about a minute and a half.
All right. Roads. Number one issue of our residents in a recent survey, road problems.
Mm-hmm.
The Schallenkamp and Howe and nobody else told me that the mayor of the town of Indian Trail was the delegate for the MUMPO organization which deals in roads. Mr. Schallenkamp wanted to serve, so he ended up serving, and I never knew that. No one ever told me, but it was made known to me by a former council member that they all knew, and they really should have told me. But after I got on the MUMPO, I discovered some rules and made a case that there was a very dangerous intersection.
Right, you came on here, spoke about that intersection.
I did, and I asked that they free up some of the $3.2 million that they had been putting in the bank for creating downtown roads to start going out there and servicing the roads and taking care of the problems and the dangerous intersections that the people have been complaining about. No one had ever suggested that be done. And the town actually collaborated with the DOT to create this particular road that you just referred to.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked that money be freed up to do it. They actually allowed that, but what had been proposed prior to that recently was a $250,000, about the same amount of money, road to be built for the staff next to town hall so they can get out of work easier at the end of the day. And I was like, Pete, if you know me at all, that's like dangling meat in front of
that's red meat.
Dog.
You can't be blamed for reacting adversely to that.
And I criticize him for it. And it's on the record. I think January the 11th meeting engineer or planning report, anybody can go on our website and listen to the exchange, and it was presented as this will help the staff. And I'm going, wait a minute. We've got people here.
You've got the dangerous intersection that needed to get fixed.
Same amount of money.
Right. Hey, Mayor Quinn, I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us tonight. We've got some audio. We're going to play with this for the next hour, or not the whole next hour, but we'll take that up at the other side of the news. But thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.
Take care.